I'm looking forward to talking to you more about healing from trauma, not only to give you concepts, but to make everything eminently practical, right? I'm not here to just talk about this stuff. I'm here to help people get healed. Just over 6 years ago, my brain melted out my ass and I was forced to get help for what I would find out was complex PTSD, c-ptsd, childhood trauma, whatever you want to call it. Mine was really bad and it had metastasized into this gnarly, absolutely batshit insane thing that had turned my brain and completely weaponized it against me. And things have been bad for a really long time, but in May of 2018, they had managed to get worse and go to a place that I didn't really know was possible. I didn't know it existed in this human plane. I thought if such a hell existed, surely it would happen after death, hopefully to really bad people. I'm not perfect, but I don't think I qualified for the shit that I went through. It was absolutely wild. Unbelievably awful. But 6 years has passed, and in that time, I have managed to crawl my way back from that pit, back into the light. The healing journey continues, but something incredible happened a few weeks ago. A therapist ran me through a questionnaire where it's called a PCL5, I think. It's basically the test that they give you to see how bad your PTSD is. And he chuckled and he says, well, technically, you don't have PTSD. And I nodded my head. I knew what he was saying because I myself had taken that test so many times by then. I knew that my score was quite low that day that I took it. Now, if I had taken it 3 days after that, I probably wouldn't have scored that low. I was having a particularly good day. But the point is, to go from that messed up to technically not even qualifying for a diagnosis of PTSD, if I had walked into his office that day saying, hey, what's wrong with me? He might have listed a few things, but PTSD wouldn't officially have been one of them. So in a sense, I had healed. I had cured my PTSD. If you go into the doctor and the bone's broken and they help you put it back together and it heals, well, your leg's not broken anymore, right? That injury maybe is still there in some way. Maybe you still have PT to do. Maybe that leg isn't as strong as it was before the injury. But by any metric, by any word you want to put on it, basically, I got better. And a lot of the conversation around PTSD is about how to manage it or here are some coping tools for getting through it. But there isn't a lot out there on how to actually heal. How do we actually fix this shit? And so that's really what this channel is all about. I don't have any formal training. I'm just a guy who got the shit kicked out of him, the living shit kicked out of him in the arena of mental health, and I somehow worked my way back. So that's reason number one that I'm here to talk to you about trauma, is the fact that I found my way out. I still have a lot of healing to do. I still have a lot of shit that's, messed up and that I got plenty to work on, right? But there are millions of you out there who are still in that hell, and I know a little something about how to get out, and I want to help you do that. Now, there's lots of people on YouTube, other social media platforms talking about trauma. What makes me different? Well, the first thing is that I'm not formally trained. I'm not a licensed social worker. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a counselor. I have no formal psychological training. I guess you could say I got my psychology training on the mean streets, right? So everything I have to teach you is highly practical. Sure, I love big ideas. I actually do have a PhD. It's in the social sciences, not in psychology. So I like big ideas. And in fact, my PhD did play a role in how I was able to work myself out of PTSD. I'll explain that maybe later in the video. TLDR, having a sociological, historical, economics-based background gave me a different lens, looking from the bigger picture into the individual picture, looking at how does trauma behave in societies. That, I use my expertise on that scale to help me kind of reverse engineer how trauma was working inside of me. So I have an incredibly different perspective on the issue, and that probably did save my life. Now, the next reason you might really want to listen to what I have to say is because once I sought help, I maximized the tools that were available to me in the mental health community, pharmaceuticals, books, Google, right? I had a voracious appetite for anything that could help me get better because I was suffering, unbelievably so. I didn't know it was even possible to suffer like that. I was motivated to get better, and yet the tools that I was being offered through therapy were really focused a lot on coping, not actual healing, right? And what's the difference there? Very quickly, it would be like going back to that leg, the broken leg analogy. Coping skill is like, hey, let me show you how to limp better. Healing is, hey, let me fix your broken leg so that it can heal and you can walk around normally. Healing is definitely preferable if you have the option between the two. And it was a bit of a horrifying realization, but I ran headlong into the fact that a lot of people, well-meaning people, and the mental health community as a whole don't really know what to do with trauma. They don't really fully understand it, what it's doing, why it does what it does, how it forms, and most importantly, how we help people take their lives back from it. And as you'll see in later content, we actually try to describe a whole ton of things using this word trauma, when really there's like 7, 8, 9 different facets of the trauma rainbow that we're using this one word for. And I think we actually need to break that down, because then that helps us actually address each of those things individually. Whereas with this shotgun approach to trauma, capital T trauma, we end up talking about so many different things that we kind of get lost in the sauce. So my story began in May of 2018. I started seeing my first clinician through community behavioral health, started doing EMDR. I went hard at whatever they gave me access to, and they did really save my life, giving me access to that stuff and really just treating me like a human being who deserved care and believing me when I told them stories that I didn't think anybody would believe. You know, that changed my life. So I'm indebted to the mental health workers who were involved in my journey. I wouldn't be here without them. But about January of 2019, a short 6-7 months later, I was like, okay, what's next? What's the next part? Because I can see this mountain I have to climb. By then I kind of understood that my childhood was characterized by abuse and neglect. And I had never been able to say that before EMDR. I'd never been able to admit to myself that I was a child of abuse and neglect. I never was able to assign proper blame where it belonged for a lot of the things that happened in my childhood. These were huge realizations, and I could not have proceeded down the path of healing had I not reached those points of awareness. But having the awareness, having the big aha moment of, oh my God, so-and-so abused me, right? That was abuse. That wasn't just normal childhood stuff. Like, there's no normalizing it. There's no explaining it away. That was completely unacceptable, and it had a massive impact on me. Perhaps you have had that realization. Perhaps you've had the courage to look within and be honest about what happened to you, or you've worked with a therapist to get to that realization, or you've done EMDR like I did, or maybe you took the canoe down the river in Peru and, you know, took whatever drugs they were giving you so you can have your big aha moment. But for a lot of people, just knowing what traumatized them is only the beginning of the journey. So to put it very briefly, I just kind of hit the end of the road of what they had for me. And I was shocked and upset. I thought, surely, everyone's always telling you, like, if you do the work, you got to do the work, right? That if you just go in and get therapy, and hey, I had really good therapists. So like, this was kind of the only thing keeping me going, was this belief that, okay, as long as I keep showing up, someone's going to be able to tell me what's next, what to do next, where to go next, what to read next, what concept, right? And it was kind of like, I graduated from my white belt and I got my blue belt, and I was like, okay, great. Which belt am I training for next? And they're like, we don't know what colors come after this. It's flash forward. I kind of just had to figure it out by myself. And this is where, like I alluded to, my whole lifetime of curiosity on the topic of like, what's wrong with me? So reading psychological texts, being interested in the topic, being interested in a huge number of things. I mean, I got a PhD in geography because I didn't really want to pick one profession. I didn't want to pick one field of study. Geography allowed me to basically get a PhD in everything and pick and choose my PhD and how, just based on my vast and sweeping curiosities. And I couldn't see it at the time, but that was a big part of what helped me reverse engineer trauma. But I also went on a deeply spiritual journey, not in the woo sense, but in the sense of, I had to let go. I mean, what else do you call it when you let go of everything that you've ever learned in life? To get to where I am today, I had to come to terms with the fact that so much of what I have been taught by parents, teachers, clergy, self-help gurus, even mental health professionals who I admire and respect, so much of what I had been taught, because of what someone taught them, wasn't working. So much of it was actually based in stories, not so much reality. And quite a lot of it qualified as a grand cultural delusion. And I'll talk a lot more about this. This needs to be backed up. I'm not just going to tell you that we have cultural delusions and not get into it. I'm just not going to get into it in this particular video. But of course we do. Because you can look around and tell there's sickness in our society. Our society is broken and sick on many levels, and it's not necessarily the fault or the character of this current generation. You know, you take any generation of people, grow them up in the environments that we grew up in, put them through the rate of technological change that we've experienced, and that's basically what happened, right? Technology is advancing so fast that the transfer of culture from one generation to the next is breaking culture. It's showing us that there were already fissures there, but the rate of technological change is just ripping them open for all to see. And this is only accelerating the rate at which we are struggling with our physical and mental health. So it was scary enough to have to deal with, being in this psychological hell with very few people to help me. They were as baffled as I was as to what was going on and what to do next. So I won't go into great detail about everything I did to get better. That's what the rest of this channel will be for. That's what the rest of this phase of my time as a content creator will be. So this is a new channel, but it's nothing new for me. I've been talking about this stuff. I've been sharing about it for over 3 years now. I started off just sharing in the, I guess you call it the weight loss space. I originally assembled a following of like 170,000 people on TikTok. And that's what I do for my full-time income, is weight loss coaching. But all my weight loss clients are really there for a deeper healing, and the weight loss is really the end result of that, or one of the end results of that. And so functionally, this is not really a shift in what I do on a daily basis, but it is a shift in how I'm talking about what I'm passionate about, how I want to help people, and not always having to route the conversation about trauma through the conversation about weight loss. Because really, the trauma conversation is vastly more important than the weight loss conversation. And if you do want to lose weight, know that that's one of the many awesome things that can happen in your life rather easily once you get out of your own way. And that's a lot of what trauma healing looks like, is finding the ways that your brain is getting in your way, actively creating problems where there are none, and learning to shut it down and dismantle it. But this is just the beginning. I'm looking forward to talking to you more about healing from trauma, not only to give you concepts, but to make everything eminently practical, right? I'm not here to just talk about this stuff. I'm here to help people get healed. We're not here to fuck around. We're not here to dally about, right? You get to go on your journey at your pace, but I'm not here to blow smoke or waste anybody's time. I want this channel to be here for people who need to get better, who want to get better. And if that's you, or it's someone you love, someone you know, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, ask me your questions in the comments, offer your support. I would really appreciate it. Thanks, and I'll talk to you next time.